All right, excellent afternoon, viewer. It's a pleasure Tuesday, and guess who's back on your screen this afternoon? Of course, that's me, Kike Atanda-owo, and of course, it's my co-host. We will stop, we will stop coming to your screen when there are no more issues out there in public, or in a time when contemporary topics have left the social media space. For now, there are many issues, and for that reason, you're welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. And of course, I'm not here alone because I'm with my beautiful co-host. Let me start with Dami. Dami, I told you you're looking beautiful today.
Yeah,
how you doing? As always.
I'm doing well. I'm beautiful.
Omoluabi.
Chop no cool. Okay, that's it. Team Association of Omoluabi. Good afternoon, wherever you are having the pleasure and the opportunity to see us today. I want to tell you that if you ever get tired, you need to rest, not to quit. This is the slogan. This is a word we should take with us every time in our lives because it forms us, it makes us, and it helps us interact with others. Yeah. My name is Gbonjubola Abiri. Please stay with us.
Good afternoon, viewer. It's good to have you back again. It's a beautiful Tuesday with my chief host and my
subordinate host.
Welcome to our program. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation.
All right, let's, Nigeria is talking again. Let's hear what Nigeria has to say in terms of past events or past history on this day in history. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
On this day in history, 14th September 2018, exactly 3 years ago, pro-Biafra agitators, the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, declared general strike across the southeast and the south-south geopolitical zones and other areas where Biafrans reside on September 14 to mourn those killed in the struggle for the restoration of Biafra independence since 2015. The group stated that inhabitants of the two geopolitical zones and other conscientious Biafrans living in other parts of the country and the whole world over were required to stay indoors on that day and away from work and other daily business activities throughout the day. They stated that it would be a protest to register their anger regarding men and women killed at Afaroku in Umuahia during Operation Python Dance 2 on September 14, as well as those killed in Ngwa, Aba, Port Harcourt, and buried in unmarked mass graves as a result of the military invasion of Biafra land by the Nigerian army.
And therefore, what's the takeaway with on this day in history exactly 3 years ago? It's just unfortunate that history keeps repeating itself and it has become a culture. Let me hear what you have to say to this.
For me, I'm like, should there have been any killings at all? Must we always kill to get results?
Exactly.
Besides, these people who say they're the leaders of the Igbos, you know, are claiming they're Biafrans on Nigerian soil. How is that possible? What currency do they spend? They spend the Naira. And you keep claiming you are Biafrans. Why don't they just go sit back and start to dialogue over again? I just think the killings are one too many. And going forward, maybe we would have learned from what happened, especially now that IPOB has been proscribed by the federal government. Because you're still on Nigerian soil and you are calling yourself Biafrans. So let them allow reason prevail. That's it for me. Damlola.
Well, I think I partly share your submission, but I think that I'm going to go back to the government. It is reasonable to reach how would I put it, a reliable agreement. Now, the Biafras are still agitating. Yoruba nation is there. We have Boko Haram. These are the three main ethnic groups that Nigeria covers or that lives in the country Nigeria. But now if we say we want to do it an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. Let us reach a reliable concession. Let us talk about it. What do everybody want? Enact it. Put a level of it into practice. I always still say Nigerians are very complacent. We want the basic, not the basic getting into luxury. So when we have continuous agitations, let's go back to the table and sit down. Then if it's not resolvable, after you know that you must have tried so hard, then we can at least take a lasting solution. But for now, let's go back and listen to every part.
September 10th was designated to be the World Suicide Prevention Day, a day set aside for tackling and addressing the issues of mental health that leads to suicide. Unfortunately, in our country here, there have been series of reports corroborating the fact that suicide is on the rise and more disturbing. It has recently been a mental health disorder affecting the youth more. Statistics shows that in 2016, Nigeria had the highest prevalence of suicide in Africa, and we may be tempted to look further on these causes. The how, why, and who of these problems will be discussed on the show today. And to discuss further and provide expert insight on this mental disorder, we have a doctor and a medical director who is a psychiatrist in our midst. All right, welcome to the show, Dr. Abiri. It's a pleasure to have you on our lunchtime show today. And I must say that you look beautiful, knowing that you don't put on earrings.
Thank you so much for having me.
Unlike some people that have 6 O's.
Multiple,
going straight to the business of the day. Speaking about the World Suicide Prevention Day, which took place on September 10th, I think on Friday, Nigeria's figure is now on the rise. And I must ask you, what are the activities of the global regional responses to the increase of awareness about suicidal behaviors and how to effectively prevent them, knowing that where we are today, there are loads of issues that is ongoing when it comes to depression and suicidal?
Well, so thank you very much for having me. I, of course, must lend my voice to the fact that suicide is what we like to describe as a public health emergency. It's an issue that is not just local for us in Nigeria, but, global, worldwide. And because, like you have rightly said, the rates are increasing. Rates, of course, will continue to increase depending on increasing number of mental health conversations, disorders, impulsivity, because, quite a number of times people think that people who end their lives by suicide almost always have a mental health problem, but that's not the case.
Really?
There's some times when, suicides are impulsive, where people suffer financial difficulties, where people suffer, relationship problems, and they think that, well, the only option at that time is to take their own lives.
End their lives.
Yes, so I think it's extremely laudable that there's a day set aside, even though it's a conversation we should have every day. Exactly, almost every day. So setting off that day aside to, talk about suicide, talk about what the rates of suicide are, the causes of suicide, is definitely, giving a lot of awareness, advocacy, and education to, suicide rates in individuals.
Many thanks for that.
So, but I'd like to ask you, like Nigeria and in its peculiarity, a lot of things are factors that affect suicide patients. And I know that some people do not even understand that they're on the verge of being suicidal. How do you help people who don't even identify themselves?
I think that one of the first things that I would say is that we need to come to that reality that it can happen to anybody.
Okay.
And suicide, like any mental health disorder, is no respecter of age, gender, socioeconomic status, religion, or even tribe. And so if we come to that realization that it could be me, it could be you, it could be anyone else. It may not be because you're going through a difficult time. Like I just said, suicides can be impulsive. And so understanding that I can have, a suicidal attempt because I'm going through a difficult time is the first thing to do. The second thing to do, I would say, is arm yourself with information. And so one thing I always say is learn about mental health. Not because you think you have a mental health disorder or you pray to have a mental health problem, but you want to be able to identify what the signs and possible symptoms are when the situation comes. We often say in my line of work that the single most effective predictor of suicide is a previous history or a previous attempt at suicide. And so if you see someone who has attempted before, even though, people may dismiss it and say, oh, he's trying to get attention, he's trying to, run away from the issues of life, take that single most, effective predictor as a risk factor for suicide. And then, of course, mental health disorders. So people who have depression, people who have psychotic conditions like schizophrenia, substance abuse disorders, personality problems, people who are unable to tolerate the stress or the blows that life deals
at us.
Exactly, and of course we refer to that as resilience. People who are not resilient or who don't have what we call life skills. These are the kinds of people who are more prone to, suicidal attempts.
Wow. Okay, it's no longer news that we do not pay attention to mental health issues in our peculiar country. Question now is, how do we change that narrative?
Well, so you see me smiling when you said that. I feel like, what do we pay attention to?
I know. I'm just confining that to the topic for the day.
Yeah, well, so while we have not paid attention to, mental health disorders, I must tell you that the awareness has increased, advocacy has increased, because, for instance, you see people who are actually patients themselves come out to say that I had depression, I battled with this.
Who can talk about it.
Yeah,
now.
they're talking about it.
Okay.
That was something that was never. And of course, it's a culture of silence that has been reinforced by largely religion, culture, the beliefs that we've held over time, the taboos and the stigma and discrimination that is associated with mental health conditions. And so back to your question, how do we change the conversation to change the culture? Talk about it. So, I mean, this is great. You're talking about it. We remember the day, we celebrate the day. The next, day that is looking at mental health is the World Mental Health Day on October 10th. And so if we start to give, attention to these issues, we start to talk about it freely. We start to demystify, the myths, the misconceptions, the taboos, and then we are, we're not ashamed. Exactly. We need to start having what we call healing. Exactly. We need to start having what we call unashamed conversations.
Okay.
It would surprise you that sometimes, even within colleagues, you are made fun of, like, oh, you're a psychiatrist, you're likely to become like your patients one of these days. So you can imagine if a learned colleague in your line of work says that kind of thing about you, what would people on the street say? So it's continued education, continued advocacy, continued information, making information easily accessible to people. And of course, each one should, of course, change attitudes in general.
Okay, but
all right, many thanks for that. I remember, because I know that recently on Big Brother Nigeria, there's one of the participants.
Housemates.
Yeah, that's how you know that I'm a trainer. One of the housemates who recently fell into depression, and I know that depression is another common disorder these days, and we've seen that people are owning up even on social media, on different platforms, talking about the stories of depression, talking about what they're going through. But the question is, how often do you think people should, guard their space, in terms of avoiding falling into that depression when it comes to mental health, especially when it comes to their areas, when it comes to sometimes circumstances with their personal lives, their financial status as well, that like you shared earlier. How do you think that the society or the government is actually helping or supporting them to find a balance with their mental health?
All right, so I think the first thing to say is, to say that I haven't interviewed the young man who was on the show. So it's, for me, I may not, want to conclusively say that this is what he had, but of course the news is out there that he had a bit of issues with his mental health that he had to go out to tackle. I think that one of the first things I would say is that we all need to take our mental health seriously and make it a priority. It's first your responsibility before it is the responsibility of everyone else. One of the greatest philosophers of all time, Socrates, said, man, woman, know thyself. If you know yourself, you're self-aware, you know what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are.
You guard your space.
Exactly, you know how to guard your space. You need to be able to identify people, places, and processes that strain and stress you. And so what I would say that people generally need to do about, keeping their mental health in check is that you need to be mindful. You need to, and mindfulness.
I want you to emphasize more on that.
Mindfulness, is a bit of a relaxation technique, or, a behavioral intervention that we talk about, where people are clear, conscious, and deliberate about their life's choices. So you need to be clear, intentional, and deliberate. Conscious, take conscious, take conscious choices about your health. If you notice that, you wake up and you feel a certain way, so that's self-awareness, checking with yourself. How am I feeling today? Why am I feeling this way? Okay, something happened. Is my response exaggerated as compared with what exactly, or how did I react to it? You need to be able to self-regulate. Okay, so I'm not feeling very good this morning. What can make me feel better? Should I listen to a bit of music? Should I call someone up? or should I just
go
keep
out?
yeah, should I go out or should I stay by myself a little bit? And of course, if you start having, symptoms or concerns that you can't explain and they've been persistent for quite a while, like you mentioned, depression, low mood, persistent loss of interest.
swings?
Yeah, well, we all have them. But, when you're looking at depression, you're looking at persistence in timing and duration. So usually we would make a diagnosis of depression if the individual has had persistent low mood, loss of interest in formally pleasurable activities, or lack of motivation or drive to do anything for at least a 2-week period. And, that being low in everything affects personal life, affects relationships, affects occupational functioning, and affects the individual in the environment that they live in as well. Of course, there are other added symptoms to depression. Biological symptoms such as eating, appetite, sex, sleep affected. The individual, of course, would have low perception of themselves and their abilities. They may cry.
I'm curious. How does
Excessively.
sex affect? I want to know. Enlighten people like us.
before.
I mean, so sex is a biological function.
Yes.
Okay.
And so what we find most times in depression is that there's low libido. The sex drive is low. There's no motivation to even want to be touched.
There's no urge to
There's
want
no urge
to-
to want to
want to
do anything. So
go
the
into
arousal is low. Even when you have a partner who is saying, "Oh, let's do this," you're like, "No, I'm not in the mood."
And you
So-
get touchy easily.
Yeah, of course, you
Yeah.
become unduly irritable as well, which is one of the symptoms. And these biological functions of sleep, appetite, and sex are all linked. And so when
Sleep,
one suffers,
Appetite and sex.
when one
Put it down
suffers,
quickly.
the other is also likely to suffer. However, I should also add at this point that there's some types of depression where you have, the flip side. Instead of mood being low, or rather, instead of appetite being low and sleep being low, the individuals are eating excessively,
excessively.
or they're sleeping excessively. And of course, that is what we call atypical depression, not the typical kind of depression.
What about the one you shut the whole world out?
So that's
You're
depression.
afraid to wake up in the morning because you
depression.
don't want to see the brightness
That's
of the
that's a major depressive
Just
disorder.
want to be in a dark space.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you're thinking that
Oh,
everything...
flipping the curtains
But
open is a
on this
problem.
point, have we made enough centers available for people to even speak about?
So there's never enough. The work never stops. It's like saying that the biggest brands in the world stop advertising because they've made a name. You can't stop. I was speaking with a colleague in the UK yesterday. I was discussing a patient, and it's a difficult patient because we've done pretty much just about anything and we're not getting as much responses. And he said to me, if you don't mind sharing the case with me, I'd like to discuss with the National Psychosis Unit.
Wow.
I'm like, wow.
Well,
The
that
national-
seems big.
There's work going on, and of course we must commend the work that has gone on. So it doesn't look like we're not doing anything. There's work going on. For instance, in all the local government centers,
Healthcare centers.
centers in there, places where you can speak to people about your mental health.
There's a desk for it,
Yeah,
the
there's a
desk
desk
office.
for it. So
Okay.
there's a lot of work, but there's also a lot of terrain to cover.
Okay, now, these people that we speak to, because I know that generally in Nigeria, a lot of us lack basic empathy. Now, these people you want to speak to also have problems.
Yeah.
It's just like when you go to our regular doctors and nurses who will
Or
believe
pastors.
that or pastors who will believe that are caregivers, then they are irrational in their thinking, or they are even very touchy in their response, flipping through their own mood swings too. How will such a person who has been detailed to help you, really help you when such a person is suffering the same thing you're suffering?
So here's what I would say. See a professional.
A professional does not need help too.
So I'm going to come to that point.
Okay.
There are people who you can see for counseling.
Yes.
But a counselor will speak to you from their own life experience. They will speak to you from the things they've gone through. If you speak to a professional is fully equipped, trained and taught to deal with whatever issues that you're going through. A professional is able to identify when they are also not in a good place. And when they also need to speak to someone
Somebody
else.
else.
So there are days that I wake up, like in January this year, I told my manager, I said, this month, I don't want to see anybody.
Wow.
And she was like, what's going on? I was like, well, I also need care. I want to sleep. I
You
want
want
to
to
wake
relax
up. I want
and
to
be taken care
Exactly.
of.
I want to relax and be
I'm
taken
happy
care
with
of.
that angle that you just came from,
Yes.
because I read a report from Oyetunji and Arafat that shows that majority of the reported cases were male at 80.6%, about 20, and of course about 20 of the females as well. So I would like to know, are there special reasons for this sharp gender effect, knowing that the way our culture, I want to tailor it down to Nigeria, they always feel that it is the women who are actually prone to depression, not men?
Well, so now we're looking at two different disorders.
Yes.
Women are more prone to depression as compared with men. However, men are more likely to attempt suicide and die by suicide. Women also attempt suicide, but they can survive. If you look at
Why is that?
Why women survive? I think.
well,
women,
so look at the mode. What do men do when they want to take their lives? Men who take their lives are intentional about it and will do just about anything to ensure that the process ends. A woman is more likely to choose a more subtle method, and even only because of that, women are less likely to die as compared with men. Of course, if you also look at the fact that women are resilient, women talk about the conditions that they go through. Women are encouraged by society. People will tell you, oh, she's a weak woman. Oh, women are the weaker vessel. Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Women are more likely to seek help as compared with men. Men, on the other hand, are more likely to bottle up issues.
They're not allowed to cry.
You can't.
They're not allowed to show their emotions.
They want to be
bottle
a
up
man
all
about
their-
Exactly. They want to be
problems.
man about it. Exactly.
Yes.
And so you find that the coping mechanisms that men also turn to would include things like, using alcohol excessively, turning to substances of abuse, and very often I think it's also important to talk about how men's ego also, so the ego of a man, comes in. For a man to decide that I just want it all to end. We say something about the degree of hopelessness. For someone to decide to take their lives, they've looked at everything and decided every corner, found nothing. And say that, there's a Yoruba saying that says that, I'd rather die than be found, suffering or being an object of mockery. So those kind of things are, part of the factors that tilt men into, suicide.
Don't forget that you can be part of this conversation by calling our studio number 080-988-77400, showing on your screen right now. And of course, we are also live on our YouTube page on Real Talk with Kike, and of course on Silverbird platform page on YouTube, on Silverbird platform on YouTube page as well. Efo, let me allow you go. I know you wanted to ask a question.
We all know we're Nigerians. I don't know who's a non-Nigerian at this desk. We all know Nigeria is
I am mixed.
we all know that Nigeria is a very challenging country. So for our benefit and the benefit of the viewer, what are the likely signs I should be looking out for in a suicidal person?
All right, thank you so much. I like that you highlight, the environment.
Yes.
And so at this point, it's also important for me to let people know that suicide can happen because there are biological risk factors, psychological risk factors, and social risk factors. So biological would be an underlying ailment or disease. Psychological will be the psyche, the personality, exposure to traumatic life events or adverse experiences. And social, of course, will be the environment, the unemployment, the financial instability, the insecurity, to mention but a few. And so how can you know if someone is suicidal? And so the first response is, sometimes you may never know. And so, when a few years back they came and told us HIV, they show for face. Sometimes you may never tell that an individual has a mental health disorder. I mean, if you look at some of the big names, an Anthony Bourdain, a Kate Spade, who seemed like they had everything going on for them. But one day we just heard that they ended their own lives. So it's important to look at things from what I would call smiling depression or high-functioning depression.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so it's like, I'm smiling, but that's not
It's
what really
as
is.
well.
Like, this is not my real face.
Yeah.
And so quite a number of people are struggling. They're finding it difficult to make ends meet. They're not being able to successfully run their families, run their homes, attend to their jobs. They're not productive. Social inequalities, social adversities, the reality of, the environments that we live in. And so you take a town like Lagos, stress when you're at home, stress
Traffic.
when you go out, traffic.
On all sides.
On all sides. You go to a place like Imo, like he said, I'm wondering, why is petrol 300 naira? The pump price is supposed to be 160.
Imo is currently having chaos of the IPOB members, and just yesterday, some students who were writing exams, they were sent out of it. So there's a lot of
they brought the
imbalance.
vehicles, the
motorcycles were
the
burned.
motorcycles
So-
of the vigilators.
So a lot of, those inequalities, adversities, extremes of life, no jobs, poverty continues to, you know, increase every day, and it continues to test the resolve and the resilience of the very and every Nigerian. It's not everyone that will not break under pressure. It's easy to, you know, sit down here and say, oh, see a therapist or talk to someone, but I mean, if someone hasn't even eaten, if someone even hasn't eaten, would you be saying to them that, oh, you need to see a therapist? And it's the reason why, you know, everyone must have the skill.
All right, many thanks for that. We have Ariel from Edo State calling. Please make your point count. Please go ahead and go straight to the point, please. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yes.
Apologies, I have to let that go. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to say now, according to where at the juncture where we got to, seeking professional help is not cheap. Huh? Person will never chop, like you said. Never chop 2 times. You say, make carry money go hospital. You go look, you say, even the paracetamol, I'm not sure say need. Because there are a lot of times that hunger holds us as a weakling. And you find somebody I found somebody in the pharmacy before, and he was actually looking for bread. It shows that it's not paracetamol that is his problem, but hunger. Now, how do we make it accessible for the last person to come on board to say, okay, I know I need help. This is what I have financially. Do not judge my financial status now, because your financial imbalance is adding up to this depression. How does it come very affordable?
All right, so I think the first thing I would say is that health is not cheap. It's a difficult reality to swallow, but that's what it is. The other reality I want to shock you with this afternoon is that at present, we have less than 200 psychiatrists in Nigeria.
Less than 200?
Yes.
I was coming to that.
The psychiatrists, the psychologists, the occupational therapists, the numbers are dropping every day.
And why is that?
Brain drain.
No motivation.
Brain drain. Greener pastures. People just want to go because nothing looks like it's working here anymore. And so if you say that we have 200 million people, 200, one psychiatrist seeing 100 million people. Yeah, seeing 1 million people. So exactly. So the reality is that, and I think that the hospitals are still on strike.
Yes.
The reality is that it's tough. And so, like I said at a conference that I attended a few weeks ago, the need is here. The resources are down
below.
And so the truth is, not everybody may have access to a mental health professional. It's the reality. It's the harsh reality. Not everyone may have access. And so the best that we may need to do for ourselves is learn how to take care of ourselves before adversity strikes. To learn what mental health is, to learn how it is that we are in good mental health, to learn how, to identify the signs and symptoms.
But Dr. Abiri, listening to you, I must add that, not everyone sees the psychiatrist. If you want to be honest there, because people are quick to attach superstition to mental disorder, because people will say, how can we help people around us with suicidal behavior, knowing that we have churches or mosques that can help us and the likes and all that. So how can we quickly detect from our neighbors, without we bringing religion into whatever mental health that they are going through, that you can let those who are listening to us right now learn from it?
Well, so I think that a good place to start is that even doctors sometimes miss the signs of suicide. Even psychiatrists can miss the signs of suicide. Research has shown that, a number of persons who went on to take their own lives were still seeing a doctor at least a week before they decided to go on. And of course, the doctor would have asked, do you feel like ending your life?
Do you feel better? Are you happy?
Yeah, let me just go home and get it done. How can we, discourage people from talking about, making it a God conversation every time?
Exactly.
We must talk about it. It's easy for, people to just say, oh, it's not your portion. I reject it for you, which are, many of the things that we hear from time to time. And it's the reason why, like question
Apologies,
that you said.
I have to interrupt your line of thought again. We have a caller from Benin. Many thanks for calling. Please go straight to the point.
The issue about this issue of mental illness and the suicide. Hello?
Yes, please. We are all ears.
Yes, the prices in the country, things are just going up. People are being frustrated over the issue of the country. So that can even result to people being depressed over the issue of the country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Efo.
So, She was going to say something that whilst you were talking.
Yeah. So I mean, to end or
So I'll take it up from
to
there.
decrease the conversation about, oh, it is well, it is this. I mean, pastors die by suicide. Other religious leaders die by suicide. And it's to, you know, to pretty much have an understanding of what the issues are. To understand, like I said earlier on, it's not a curse, it's the reality. The fact that it can happen to anyone. Anyone can break or bend under pressure because they probably can't cope with what is going on. And even if they have all the help that they get, they may still decide that, well, it's an option and I'm going to take that option.
But
Okay,
do you think, sorry, Efo, please.
Okay,
Sorry,
because
please.
of time.
Do you think that we should also narrow this teaching down to the churches? I mean, where you have weekly activities, one of their weekdays should be dedicated to teachings like this. Let people in your church know if they do not have access to medical facilities. At least bring it down to your yard.
Well, so that it doesn't look like war, yeah.
For what she just
Yes.
said, pastors are not counselors. They're not.
Yes.
A lot of people have messed up lives. A lot of them have messed up
I
lives.
agree.
Look, that's the honest truth. Because running to them, they have their own issues.
Yes, they
No,
do.
but what I'm saying is they can
Yes.
also bring in professionals as one of their weekly
The
service.
professionals are scarce, just like she said. And that's where I'm coming to. The government's inclusion in this matter, so that at least we can bring the mental
All right,
health.
apologies, guys. I have to interrupt your conversation. We have a caller from Benin calling. Many thanks for calling. Please go straight to the point.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. You know, this depression of a thing, is all over the country, Nigeria, as we are speaking. Because if you see, like 2016, if you know what happened in Nigeria, many people lost their jobs due to the change of government. And many people are trying to survive. And it has not been easy. As people earlier said, that depression, suicide comes more in men because of their responsibility. And sometimes they are not bold to come out and tell people what they are facing. And the government is not even supporting the situation. A man with family who cannot longer take care of his family, who cannot longer pay his bills, definitely is already on a problem. And he cannot look or see where to go. So it's very difficult, but I pray God that suicide is not the solution. Suicide is not the solution.
Many
but
thanks, Abraham. Many thanks for sharing your experience and all. Because of time, we have to wrap up on this segment. I must say many thanks for coming on the show. Of course, we've enlightened us. And I must say that because strengthen you on this path that you have been taking. Because I believe that teachers and people like you and lawyers are the ones that are actually changing the narrative in the society. On that note, before we let you go, let's discuss what affects us all, and that's the trending story that caught our attention. And the first trending story that caught our attention is that 18-year-old girl who was killed by a trigger happy cop. You know, I must ask you, Efo, what's your take when this story was shared in our platform?
When I read it, I said, this is one death too many. It's very unnecessary, you know, because our policemen have to be responsible. If you find out a good number of them are illiterate, that's the honest truth. It's not going through the university that makes you literate. No. You know, they have to be more responsible. Because, okay, they're telling us the man has been arrested, he's going to be dismissed. Is that going to bring Monsurat back? It won't bring her back. And we've had too many extrajudicial killings in our country because the police know how to cover for themselves. They do. Well, it's hearsay. The man has been arrested. Show his face. Let's see who he is. So that when I see him in my neighborhood, I'll say, okay, this is the man who did what. Do you understand? You know, we can't go on like this. These are the people we call the leaders of tomorrow. She's gone. So how are the parents supposed to go on with their lives?
All right, many thanks for that. And I'm happy that it's a good thing that we are talking about mental health today because a young lady, you know, getting ready to start her life from university to becoming a woman to defining her life, you know,
she had
and
dreams.
her life has been cut short. I pray that the court gives the appropriate judgment. And the reason why I'm saying this is the fact that, you know, when you hear a triggered happy, feeling
yes.
cop. I'm asking, you know, because
how did we make up all these
because
words?
it's not funny. True. You know, you've taken someone's life, and a family and a generation who's going to suffer for it for the rest of their lives. You know, most times the reason why these police officers misbehave, if you ask me, just like you emphasized earlier, is the fact that they believe that nothing will be done. You know, they will get over it and the likes and all of that. So I think that it's best for us to start changing the narrative quickly, so that when we do something wrong, you know, die the same way they have killed another fellow. I think that, I'm sorry, that's the way I feel, because, you know, it's becoming too many, and at the end of the day, sometimes you might not even hear about these stories anymore, because to be swept
they know how to cover for their own.
So, you know, like, life is too costly, you know, for us to now be losing people carelessly or foolishly, or because of power intoxication. Because I'm asking myself, is it because you think you have a gun in your hands, and the reason why you feel that you can, you know,
Kike, that's what it is.
But I think that, on my part, I think that a lot of our police officers and uniform men should be taken back through psychological evaluation.
Yes.
Now, I also discovered that there's something called empathy deficit disorder, where some people don't even have it. Yeah. So no matter how you try, it's a deficit, it's deficient. They don't have it. So how would you give what you don't have? But if it started from the grassroots of what's that reorientation and evaluating them, you can tell who will do it exactly. The one
quickly, Doctor, what do you think? What do you have to say to this?
Well, so I'll just take it from where she's dropped it, the empathy deficit syndrome. And I would say that it's important that we remember that this environment is traumatic.
It is.
From childhood through little age, through adolescent years, even, you know, to when we are old, everybody goes through trauma. And then when we go through trauma, is that trauma addressed? Do we seek professional help to help with the trauma? Not likely. I remember many years ago when I was training, a police officer came into my office. And at that time, he said that he was hearing voices.
What voices?
Telling him to shoot, to kill people.
Yes.
So again, the mental health of just about anyone can be ignored. Everyone's mental health matters.
And what was the case report? Was it reported to the...
Oh, definitely. It was recommended that he be taken, you know, a gun taken away from him, and he be put in like in an administrative office where he doesn't have direct contact. Yes, but you can imagine that someone has gone to a traumatic exposure, maybe an extrajudicial killing, has watched people die, has watched people being killed, and he develops a post-traumatic stress disorder where he re-experiences, he avoids, or he's hyper-aroused when he's reminded, and he's not treated for it. Chances are when he gets an opportunity to shoot, he will shoot.
The second trendy story that caught our attention is that of the singer Ajayi, who was assaulted by a female VIO in Abuja.
When I saw this video, I was like, this lady, that's her face. She must be fired. Who does that? It happens all of the time in Lagos. We see it everywhere. How do you go biting a man driving? I mean, you jumped in the car and you're struggling with the wheel. A man who had his wife and children in his car, under the pretext of arresting, when you now couldn't have your way, you had to bite the man. She's the first to go through a psychological evaluation.
This is highly unethical, and I don't think that there's anywhere in their books or rules of their engagement that permits that VIO, you know, officers can assault drivers or offenders on the streets, you know. But for the sake of this occurrence or occurrences, because it's becoming too many, let's assume that the singer is wrong. It's an assumption, and has committed a road traffic offense. Is this how a VIO officer is trained to handle such cases? Whether we like it or not, life could have been lost. Should it even lead to assaults to the extent that you are biting a fellow driver? And I'm wondering, if a fellow woman can do this on a broad daylight, God knows what he will be doing to the husband. I'm very sorry, but that's the truth. We've seen how women kill their men. Do you understand? these are little issues, that red flags that we should pick, you know, because at your place of work, you can act like that to a fellow woman, that means there's something wrong. So we need to also improve the ethics and the approaches of the field engagement, especially when it comes to our road and traffic agencies. This could have led to the death of somebody else.
Maybe
this
the
could have
entire
been
family.
another story entirely. But I think that BIO, if they are listening to us, the FRS agencies watching should pay attention to this. We have improved in Lagos State, I must confess. Do you understand?
To a large extent.
You know, when it comes to motorists and the likes, how it's being monitored, you know, via traffic cameras for offences and the likes, and those are things that we need to continually improve on, just like it's done in other developed countries. But people can't get fines on the streets, unlike abroad. You know, when you misbehave like that on the street, they send your fines to your doorstep in your house. It is because we do not have database in this country. That is the reason why all of this is still, you know, it has become a culture. Yeah. It has become something that we've embraced. Even sometimes when you are not in the wrong, once you cite them, you just want to give them something. Yes. You just want, you know, and I'm wondering, how can you avert such casualty? Let's assume that this had led to another death. It's just ridiculous how we think. I don't know, maybe it's the poor mentality. And the reason why all this
seriousness.
This got nothing to do with that.
Absolutely nothing.
Doc, what do you have to say to this?
Well, so I took two things from what you said. Training, do they undergo training? What kind of training do they undergo?
Who trains them?
Who trains them?
Yeah.
And how regularly are they trained?
Yes.
And then, of course, the ethics of their profession as well.
Yes.
What do the ethics of their profession say?
Exactly.
The last thing, of course, that I want to add to that is there's a theory we call the frustration-aggression theory. When people are frustrated, they are likely to become aggressive. And, I mean, see all the people that are called today. People are frustrated.
Yes,
people are tired. And at any little instance, chances are they would unleash it out. That's exactly what happened with this woman. And like you rightly pointed, if she could do this outside, in the line of duty,
husband,
we can only just imagine what may be happening at home.
All right, on that note, we've come to another episode of Real Talk with Kike. Many thanks for coming again. I must say that you're very articulate. I love your English, very clean, clear, and beautiful.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you know, most times when you see people, they just want to come and speak all this big grammar, but they are not quiet. People are not, you know, clarity is key when communicating, and I must say I admire that about you.
Thank you very much.
And many thanks for creating time to be here today.
Thank you for coming.
You're very welcome.
So on that note, indeed, we've had a good conversation today, and so we'll come your way on Thursday, but you can catch me on Inspiration FM Live tomorrow on Real Talk with Kike, of course. And I say bye now.
I'll say keep
Bye.
it good.
We'll keep the conversation going.
That's it.